Hi everyone, welcome back to our discussion on what is a good test. In the first part we talked about the sufficient and focused tests, that we both agreed with Bart that it's good to have a test that is clearly defines what it tests, what it depends on in the test, and also not to be very noisy. Then I mentioned that I prefer a test to cover a sensible chunk of logic, and we digressed into. You gave an example. Let's say we have a guardian somewhere, like check not null or a little bit more complicated, whether it would be a good test to write for this particular guardian. And I got digressed a little bit, arguing that it might be a pointless test. I would like to have it maybe just properly commented and documented. But this is not really related for me to the sensible, not what I meant by the sensible code. Because even if I have this small, very little small piece of functionality, a method that starts as the first line with this check, and I am having a test for this, okay, it's sensible enough. It's not, well, you can argue that whether you need this test or not, depending on your style and the style of the code base, how you guys prefer to do that, it's fine. What I mean by non-sensible is slightly different. And that's the case where you have like a glue code, something that's very straightforward, which doesn't do much. And then you have maybe one if statement, if A do 1, if B do 2. And that works in combination with lots of other pieces of your functionality, because you know that this fork is because there was something else before and because there will be something else after. And that one, in this case, I like to say I would like to have a test that covers the full sensible chunk from the beginning to the end, where this fork makes sense, where I see the effects of this fork, not just to have isolated test of this small thing with if then else. And here I'm of course trying to take on the mocking, but probably we'll look at that a little bit later.
Yeah, and I'm also having to restrain myself because this starts to get on a topic that I've been thinking on for quite a bit that is not so much related to testing.
But
so
we can have a small digression just to mark it up.
Okay, because and that's on abstraction. I've been thinking more and more that conditional program flow is a code smell. And mostly an abstraction smell. But that's very...
Yeah, that's a different. I agree. This is a slightly different topic, and this I took just an example, the same way as you, maybe a little bit trivial, but just for an example that we have this guardian.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it could be something slightly different. Well, conditional. Sometimes we have to do the conditions.
No, yeah, exactly. So you're saying if there's no business logic, I guess, in a class, it's just orchestration logic, maybe?
Actually, it doesn't even matter for me that much business or orchestration and so on. Even if we're talking about business, I would prefer to have a bigger chunk of business if it's possible. Because most of the time, business rules, they also work a little bit together. But usually they are on the higher level, but there can be some lower level things. And I have preference to have a bit of an overview. Why I want this? Because I want to decrease my cognitive load when I reason about how my system works. And that's where I'm coming from. Well, that's why I'm coming from this middle or higher level of the test pyramid. That's why I prefer them, because if I have this higher level test, almost sensible as I call it test, then I go through a bigger chunk of the things potentially. And it gives me an answer, okay, how this thing works. And I don't like when I have very many of those chances that I need to combine together in my head.
Okay, so what does that mean for writing a good test?
Yes, that means that's a very good question, because it doesn't necessarily mean going to the higher level of abstraction. That was our previous episode, which we will be returning again and again. But that's just one of the techniques. But that might also mean refactoring the code so that related things are sitting closer together, and you can test them in better isolation and with a lower level test.
So is that then for test That it tests a coherent
Yes,
set of
I would say
functionality?
coherent is a good word. Yes, I would prefer to have a coherent, and that's where we can probably come also to the question of the good design or not good design. When to make a sense of something really from the business side, you need to go through many individual tests that might be in indications that maybe your system is not designed the best way. Maybe you can rearrange the things so that the business meaningful things are sitting closer together.
I think it goes to that there's at least correlation between the quality of the tests and the quality of the design.
Maybe.
I think it's significant.
But back to good and bad tests. What we want, I guess, them to be guiding us so that they can be served as a good documentation or good explanation of what is happening, or at least we can reuse chunks of them to construct an edge case or something, whatever, ad hoc, in distinction to the cases where there is too much noise or too many assumptions, or the tests, there are many small tests that you need to combine in your head to answer some question, what is happening in this situation. And we can also maybe talk about what are not very good tests, because sometimes it's easier to know what is good when you know what is bad.
Definitely. And maybe, shall we make that the next episode?
That can be a very good idea, because yes.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So next episode is gonna be the Grumps mode.